Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Monday morning. How's everyone doing? Good morning, Sterling. Good morning, John. Good morning, Jacob. Good morning, Patrick. Good morning, David. Good morning, Harold. Good morning, Royal Palms. Let's see. Earnings. Again, shortened trading week. Shortened trading week. Good Friday this week. Futures and stocks will all be closed on Friday. Good. Goldman Sachs was a beat. Thank you for posting that in there. MTB, M&T Bank was a miss. Uh, so there. What is this? Nvidia within the next 4 years plans to produce up to $500 billion of infrastructure in the U.S. via partnerships with TSMC and Foxconn. Good morning, McRangers. Good morning, MJ. Good morning, Anissa. Good morning, Options 22. You're making this a habit. So, hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. Did anybody watch the Masters? Exciting finish yesterday. One of the better Masters in the last few years. Good morning, PMG. So, we've got tariffs still, tariff turmoil. Things are exempt, then they're not exempt. They're just moved to a different bucket. We don't know, but it's going to continue. It's just going to continue. The tariff turmoil will continue, so will volatility will continue. You just have to watch the patterns. Watch the patterns. Hello, Charles. What do we have this week? Shortened week again. Consumer inflation expectations coming out today at 11 Eastern. Then 3 and 6 month bill auction. Then lots of Fed speak. Was that 4 Fed speakers through this evening? Tomorrow we got import-export prices, Red Book, and more Fed speak. Wednesday, mortgage information, retail sales. So that's a decent number coming out on Wednesday. Industrial production and capacity. Crude numbers, as always on Wednesday. And more Fed speak, including Powell. Speaking on Wednesday. Thursday, Philly Fed, housing starts, more Fed speak. And then even on Good Friday, we have Fed speak. Even though the markets are closed, we have Fed speak. So this is a week of Fed speak. So we'll have to see how that changes their market's perception of their rate cut schedule. What else? Meta FTC Chair Ferguson, we think Meta is certainly a monopoly. They're going to have to divest in Instagram and what is it? WhatsApp? What else do we have? Hello, Christoph from the other side of the Atlantic. Welcome. So we have a green day today, a very green day today going into the cash open. Again, we had the announcement on Friday that chips and semis were exempt, but then they're only exempt from the 125%. They're not exempt from the 20%. That was clarified last month. Then they're going into a different bucket. So who knows? We're just going to play the patterns. Everything's up. Consumer defensive and real estate lagging. Technology leading. Fed Watch still has one cut, pause in May, cut in June, cut in July, cut in September, and we're down to 3 cuts. 1, 2, 3 cuts. Only 3 cuts. So again, lots of Fed speak. We'll have to get more clarification. We're still in extreme fear. Schiller PE is still $33 or 33. This week, thank you again, Sterling. This morning we had quiet in terms of earnings. We had Goldman Sachs. Again, Sterling put that in. After the close, not much. Not much that's really going to be market moving. Tomorrow we have Bank of America, Citi, Johnson & Johnson, PNC, Albertsons. Nothing's really going to market move, but things that stocks will definitely move off there. Then we have United, my broker, interactive brokers, and that's about it. ASML on Wednesday. Biggie there. Alcoa after the close on Wednesday. TSMC, there's another biggie. Sterling put that in the news with NVIDIA potentially partnering with them in this country for expansion with their investment. And then Netflix after the close. On Thursday, headed into nothing with Friday because of Good Friday. All right. Good morning, Heinrich. Good morning, Richard from Maryland. All right, where do we sit? Where do we sit? Where do we sit? So, nothing's really changed. We had the pullback on Thursday, the little bounce on Friday, the follow through. So, we reacted to the top of the rotation zone. Now, if we break through the top of the rotation zone, which is also the first target now that's already been hit on the double, again, 56.50. I'm paying attention to this 50 area right up here to at least potentially, with the 50 up here, to at least potentially raise a stop. And there's actually a gap fill here. A gap fill. Now, this is for this week if we continue to rally. 57.12. I would not ignore that. This target area. And then through that, we have the 200. And a prior significant top from the end of March. About the 25th, 26th of March. That little topping area, right in line around with the 200. So we're going to have to see. Now, what's critical for me is to see if we close above this 56.66 to shift some probabilities. But I need that follow through on a weekly close, not based off this volatility, before I start getting more aggressive to the upside beyond this pattern. On any pullback, because again, who knows what's going to get announced. You still have a little potential gap fill from Friday back to 59. The exact level, let's see what the exact level of Friday's close is 53.9125. That's the official close from Friday. So that would be on a gap fill. But then you have major support, pretty major support, about 53.60 area, 53.55 to 53.60. The only thing that would get me concerned is if we started getting on the next rollover, is if we started breaking below this 52.70 on a closing basis, on a 4-hour closing basis. Because that was the peak before the pullback that formed a double. Then we came back down, tested, and we could not close below that on a 4-hour basis right here. We dipped below it multiple times, but there was significant buying pressure down here. So that's where we sit. So that's what we sit. There you go. Charles, the ES is lining up with the 50 EMA and 62.5% harmonic. Correct. This is not a potential double top, by the way, because the targets extend beyond the move that formed them. So I'm watching again on any pullback, this 52.70 area on a 4-hour closing basis, or unless we take it out with massive momentum. The NASDAQ. Again, gap up. We'll just take a look. We've already hit the first target again, so the stops have raised on these doubles. The next target, 19,580, and then the 50 EMA, the high from the 2nd of April, and the final target in the same area. Again, these are areas, again, that I'm looking for targets, but about 19.9, anywhere from about 19.950 to about 19.990. And then if it goes through there, 20,400. But again, on the weekly basis, has to close above 21.88 to shift the probabilities. Why on the weekly? Because when you have highly volatile markets, things get skewed. I did a lot of research in there, and when volatility is up at this level, now if volatility collapses back down below 20, I'll shift my tune. But until that happens, we need it follow through on a weekly basis to confirm. Pullback levels, again, you have till Friday's close at 18,807.50. And then the major key level on the NASDAQ, I'm going off about 18,300. 18,300 is the key, very key support level on a 4-hour closing basis. The minor, if you go back through that gap fill, the minor support is coming about 18,660. Other than that, we still have the probabilities up from the doubles. Now, is it guaranteed in this kind of market? No. Well, never. It's never guaranteed, but you still got to be nimble. Still got to be nimble. Dow, after hitting the first target on the double, next target is 41,700. Look at the 50s right at the 62.5 at roughly 42,000. And then you have the top of the pattern with the 200, 42.4. That's what's key. Same thing. You have we don't have a gap fill. We've already, with the slight gap up and the little selling pressure last night, filled the gap on that with the Dow. So the major level on the Dow is about 39,500. Russell. Russell, remember, we did not have a double pattern. Very key resistance up here on a continued is about 1930. And then right about 19, if it tops out around Wednesday's highs, I'd watch around 1950 as the key resistance level. If it does blow through there, the next harmonic area to really tackle is about this 2,000 mark for the next key resistance in there. Remember, the Russell's been the weakest. The VIX down little bit, 32, but still very elevated. Going to be watching to see how much this drops today. The DAX with the sloppy double that's not been invalidated yet, very sloppy pattern. I'm really paying attention to the top of this rotation zone, 21,660. That's where we had the spike high last Wednesday and the reversal on Thursday and the top of the rotation zone. So that's what I'm paying very close attention to. The notes we do on this one, the minor potential double bottom pattern is no longer. The bigger double only hit the first target and now is invalidated. So that is off the table. Still going to be watching for potential rollover plays since we did close on the daily and the weekly basis below the 62.5. So on bounce plays, I'm going to be watching for rollovers. In terms of the micro yield, we still have a little mini potential double top. This one was not invalidated, although the Head and Shoulders top was. We closed up. Oops, wrong one. I wanted this one. There we go. We closed just above the 62.5. So that was invalidated after, and I told you why I raised the stop on that, because the notes hit their first, the note futures hit their first target, and this one just missed. And the note futures carry more weight than the micro yields. What else? So that's the only thing I'm watching there. Other than that, because we did close on the daily and weekly basis, still going to be watching for potential higher yield prices. Key support in this coming back at about 4.36. Dollar index. As I said, I'm watching for bottoming patterns around here. We just formed a 4-hour potential double bottom. Still against the rotation zone, but I'm keeping an eye on this pattern. That's the one I'm looking at. It would need a close above 100.04. First target is roughly at a gap, 163, 192, 101.22. What does that look like on the daily? Because that's the 4-hour. That would take it back to the daily rotation zone. All right. We also have a daily divergence. So higher low, lower low in the dollar, higher low in the RSI. So I am keeping a very close eye on that. Crude, again, spiked down to the big harmonic cluster and then found some very key support at the minor harmonic cluster, trying to rally up, but on any continued rally, the major breakdown area is back at 65. There is not a fantastic setup besides unless we break out of crude about above 63 with some momentum, or break above 63 and retest it to confirm. Gold hitting the harmonic cluster, the dual harmonics right there, and now pulling back. First level support is about 3,200, 31.95 to 3,200, and then your major support right now is coming in about 31.50 to 31.55. Okay, that's where we sit right there. Silver, not something we watch all the time. Remember, it confirmed the massive double top, but never triggered it. Never triggered it. Excuse me. So, I'm going to be watching to see if that gets invalidated before it's ever triggered. But on a break hot, there's very major resistance up here. I'm watching to see on silver because the gold silver ratio also, if silver can get back above 32.51 on a closing basis. Copper, I did post and slice the way to I was looking to play that. I'm not going to review that here, but the double on the daily was triggered. So going to be watching especially this first target area, 4.68. 4.68 cycles moving up. Key support on any pullback is 4.45. The yen is trying to form a little mini double bottom right at virtually at the 87.5 area. So I'm going to be paying attention to that also with that potential double in the dollar. What else do we have? Curious what you learned to trade early on and what that looked like. Oh, where? I learned, let's see, soybeans, and then from the option perspective was Blockbuster and Coca-Cola. Thank you, Tony. Copper is, yes, I didn't see that comment. Copper is along, and it's a triggered double bottom. What else do we have? Spideys. All right, same virtual thing. We're gapping up just beyond the first target. Next minor target, I'd pay attention to this 549.50 area, which is a declining 50, but really then we're getting into 551.86, 560.82, and then you still have a gap behind. So you still have a gap. That's for 4 hours. Here's the daily. Pay attention right here. This gap price to back to Wednesday the 2nd, 564.52. Beyond that, it would be reconnect with the 200, 574. All right, the key support is coming in. The key is really key support is around about 522.60. The minor support would be on a rollover gap fill to 533, roughly 534. The Qs, again, reacting to the top of the rotation zone. If it can get through that, which looks like it will today, it already hit the second target. So the next final target is 476.46. Above that, you have the 50, 483, and then you have the key top area from the 25th, 26th of March with the 200. So right around 492, 493 area. That is frustrating, Daniel. See, you got your plan, Sterling. Good job on the VIX. Bitcoin. We also had the double trigger. First target hit. Next targets are 86.30, 335, 88.026. All right, that's still within a consolidation pattern. None of this does anything to invalidate the final potential rollover target. So this is just a bounce play within still the bigger potential rollover context. In order for me to get continued bullish, this would have to get above 96.250 area. What else do we have going on? Tesla still has its potential weekly double bottom, heading into earnings, not this week, but next week. So we'll have to see about that. We have NVIDIA, a gap up today with a lot of these semis are coming in stronger today. You got Broadcom. Things are gapping up. So I'm going to be reacting how they react throughout the day, whether they can hold these gap ups or not. By the way, Broadcom, if it were to reverse, does have a little mini potential double. If it continues its run If it continues its run, there's pretty strong resistance is 187.75, and then if it continued its run, it'd be 196. Going to be really watching the semis today. So you also have Apple. Apple's a big gap up here to the prior breakdown level. If it does continue, you have a gap fill to the prior top of major resistance if it continues to run. I will still be watching for rollover plays at some point in Apple after, remember, it did take off the 87.5 rule, filled the gap back from May of 24. So now I'm watching for a recovery move, then rollover plays, especially if we can get to this 212 area or just slightly above that into the weekly rotation zone. Is 4 to 5K a realistic target? If we start getting a lot of selling pressure in the market, I know people are putting out 4 and 5K targets. I wouldn't be as bullish on gold. You're just going to see people start taking winners from gold. And now it all depends on gold is, I mean, the trend is still up. From long term, the trend is easily still up. Will we get bigger pullbacks in there? Yeah. Is it getting way overdone? Yeah. And we're getting things like triple divergences up here. At some point, if you look at the monthly chart, look at this. We're going to either have to have a massive consolidation or some kind of pullback play. This is getting vertical. Doesn't mean it has to stop just yet. It is getting vertical. If I didn't tell you this was gold and I said this was another chart, a lot of people would say, whoa, you know, we got to be cautious here. This is a monthly. The monthly rotation zone is all the way back at 2870. The bottom of the road is about 2550. Okay? So it's gone really far, really fast. Does it have to stop? No. That's why it's trail from my perspective, and watch for significant topping patterns, which we don't have yet. Everything is just a minor. Yeah, I saw that. And then there's other people saying 4 to 5K. Now, could we hit 37? Yeah, 3.7K by the end of the year? Yep. I'm actually watching for a pause bar so I can do the next harmonic projections up here. We have not even had a decent pausing bar since this last pullback. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on to see if we can get a more decent pausing area so I can do the longer term projections at this point. I can ratchet them up to here. This is the last big pullback to see where that takes us. And that gives us about 35.46. And that's based off this weekly. But this was not a super strong weekly pausing bar because it only paused on the daily. That's why I'm seeing if we can at least get a if this week pulls back and then the next week does not take it out, at least we get a proper weekly pausing area. Until that, I'll use those numbers. Yeah, mining stocks are popular now. All right, that's where we sit. Let's just peek back at the S&P. Going into the open. Again, little push up. Pay attention to the prior topping area, which is also the first target today, and watch how it reacts around 55.20 on a key push up. Other than that, the support that I'm watching, if it does pull back in the open, besides this little support base at about 54.68, I'll be paying attention to the 1 hour rotation zone. All right. With that, I shall talk to everyone tomorrow. Hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful trading day and a wonderful shortened trading week. Remember, there's also Fed speak, and don't stick your head in the mud because who knows what the next tariff announcement could be. Talk to everyone later. Bye for now.